Captain Elric Voss was a man of principle, unshakable, legendary, and utterly blind to the fact that he was about to get us all killed. The ISS Valor, a mid-range Terran battleship from the old Earth Defense Fleet, had survived 3 planetary sieges, 5 black site recoveries, and 1 unclassified encounter that left half the senior crew mute for a week. Under Voss, we were survivors, warriors, the last teeth of a civilization clawing its way back into galactic relevance. And yet here we were, surrounded, cornered in orbit around Ethion's shroud by 4 Dominion dreadnoughts. No backup, no allies, our jump drive still undergoing repairs, the AI offline after the last EMP blast, and Captain Voss, he was preparing to charge. "We stand and fight," he barked on the command deck, voice booming. "We do not kneel to tyrants. The Dominion must learn what Terran steel feels like in their throat." I glanced at Lieutenant Cass and saw the flicker of fear she barely suppressed. I had served under a Voss for 6 years. I'd watched him kill with a smile and survive with nothing but rage and willpower. But this wasn't war anymore. This was delusion. Our weapons were depleted, hull at 46%. We had 1 working coil gun, 2 boarding shuttles half full of fuel, and a reactor core that wheezed every time we accelerated too fast. Half the ship had no gravity, and worst of all, we had civilians on board. Survivors from the last colony he'd rescued, 93 souls stuffed into medical bays and converted hangar decks. Charging the Dominion now wasn't bravery, it was mass murder. "Sir," I said carefully, "we're not in a position to win this fight. If we surrender..." "Surrender?" Voss turned on me like I'd cursed in sacred ground. "They'll dissect us, enslave the civilians. You want to die begging, Ensign, or die a soldier?" The deck fell silent. That was when I knew. He wasn't trying to save anyone anymore, not the crew, not the civilians, not even his legacy. He just wanted to go down swinging, to be remembered, even if it meant burning us with him. 2 hours later, the crew met in the auxiliary engine bay, out of sight, out of comm range. 37 of us, engineers, medics, junior officers, people who'd survived because we knew when to bend. "He's going to get us all killed," Cass whispered. "He already has if we let this happen," said Cho, our lead engineer. "We're outgunned, outmaneuvered, and stuck in the gravity well of a moon with no jump capacity." "So we mutiny?" someone asked. "No," I said. "We preserve the mission." "How?" I took a breath. I didn't like it, but I knew it was the only way. "We lock him in the brig." The plan wasn't complicated. Voss was predictable. He walked the same path every morning, same checks, same rituals, same isolated arrogance. He didn't believe his crew could act without him. That was his fatal flaw. He still thought we needed him. Cass lured him to medical, citing a possible Dominion bioweapon infection from the colony survivors. He came, of course, couldn't resist playing the hero. Inside, Cho hit him with a neural dampener. Non-lethal, quick, clean. He went down with a surprised grunt, his wide in betrayal. We carried him to the brig, what was left of it, and sealed the door. He screamed at first. Threats, court-martial, promises of dishonour and death. Then silence. Then laughter. "You think the Dominion will spare you?" he rasped through the cell intercom. "You've doomed us all." Maybe we had. Maybe they'd atomize us anyway. But at least now we had a choice. Cass took command. Not officially. We didn't speak the word mutiny out loud, but everyone listened when she spoke. We powered down all weapons, opened a narrowband surrender signal, released the medbay contents to show we were sheltering civilians. We sent it, and waited. The Dominion responded within minutes. "This is Commander Vale of the Van Dominion Dreadnought Eviscerant. You are surrounded. We have locked targeting solutions on your vessel." "We acknowledge," Cass replied, calm and clear. "We surrender. We carry civilians. We request mercy." A pause, longer than we expected. Then, "Stand by." Inside the brig, Voss sat alone in flickering emergency light. He whispered into the darkness. "You've made a mistake. Surrender is death slower than bullets, and the Dominion never keeps its promises." He wasn't wrong, but we had one thing left Voss didn't understand. Hope. And we were going to gamble everything on it. The ISS Valor floated powerless, its hull scorched and venting heat, stripped of weapons and pride. And above us, the Dominion Dreadnought Eviscerant loomed like a moon made of knives. We had surrendered. But in the silence that followed, Every second felt like standing barefoot on a fault line, waiting for it to crack. Commander Cass stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the screen, shoulders tight with the unbearable weight of command that wasn't hers. Not officially, not legally, but no one questioned her. Voss was still in the brig, muttering curses and predictions like a prophet of doom. The Dominion said only, "Stand by." No movement, no weapons fire, no boarding shuttles. Just the still hum of distant death. I watched the crew. No one spoke. Even the civvies in the hangar bays had gone quiet. Some prayed, others cried. A few stared at the screen, already making peace with oblivion. "Why wait?" I asked Cass quietly. She shook her head. "They're not waiting. They're thinking." "Varn don't think," I muttered. "They just burn." But then, the dreadnought hailed us again. "This is Commander Vale of the Dominion Dreadnought Eviscerant. You surrendered in protection of civilians. Explain your command status discrepancy." Cass didn't flinch. "Our captain was incapacitated due to command unfitness. The crew assumed control under Article 9.6 Terran Code." There was a pause. Then, astonishingly, "Acceptable. Prepare for boarding inspection." We stared at the screen. "Acceptable?" whispered Cho. "They're boarding us?" said Cass, more to herself than anyone. "Not shooting, not enslaving, inspecting." "That's not the Dominion we know," I said. Cass exhaled. "No, it's not." The boarding craft was sleek and black, sharp angles and glowing veins of power under its hull. It latched onto our airlock like a parasite. For a second, I expected the bulkhead to rupture and a hail of plasma bolts to rip through our corridor. Instead, the door opened. 3 Varns stepped aboard, and they weren't holding weapons. Commander Vale stood tall, draped in dark armor woven with glyphs. His face, smooth and vaguely reptilian, was unreadable, but his eyes were searching. With him were 2 aides, smaller, slower, scanning everything like archivists rather than soldiers. "You carry 93 Terran civilians," he said in fluent standard. "We confirmed life signs," Cass nodded. "We do. Refugees from Cleon's Reach. We evacuated before orbital bombardment. You do not resist. You do not fight. Why?" Cass didn't hesitate. "Because survival is worth more than pride." That earned a subtle flick of Veal's eyes, almost like approval. He spent 30 minutes inspecting the ship. No threats. No interrogations. He visited medical, spoke gently to the head nurse, observed the condition of the civilians, listened as a child clung to a stuffed toy and told him she wanted to go home to Earth. There was no Earth anymore, but Vale didn't correct her. He simply nodded and said, "Then you must live to remember it." When he returned to the bridge, he didn't address Cass. He looked at the Brig camera feed, at Voss, still pacing in circles, muttering about martyrdom and resistance and Terran steel. "That was your true commander?" Vale asked. Cass nodded. "Until today. And you removed him because he refused to surrender. Because he chose death over life, even when life was still possible." Vale stared at the screen. Then he did something no one expected. He smiled. "You have done what many Dominion officers will never do," he said. "You preserved your mission, protected your civilians, and in doing so, demonstrated the one thing humans were always feared for." Cass blinked. "What's that?" "Adaptation," Vale said. "The ability to break your own code when survival demands it." "You're not going to kill us?" "No. Or take us prisoner?" "Not today." Cass stared, confused. "Why?" Vale turned, paused at the hatch. "Because if your people have finally learned when not to die, you may yet be dangerous again." They left without another word. No demands, no prisoners, no executions, just silence. Voss screamed when he found out. "You trusted them? You think this is mercy? It's a trap. They let you live so they can study your weakness." Cass visited him once. Stood outside the brig, arms folded. "You think your way is strength," she said, "but your strength got people killed. Ours just kept 93 souls alive. You've surrendered Terran pride." "No," she said softly. "We've evolved it." Later that night, as we drifted in temporary peace, the crew gathered in the mess hall. No ceremony, no speeches, but one of the techs, a young ensign from Europa, played an old Terran song over the intercom. Quiet, hopeful. And for the first time in years, no one told him to turn it off. Peace is never just peace. Not when it comes from the Dominion. Not when it follows a century of occupation, glassed planets, and cities turned into data entries marked eradicated. When Commander Vale let us go, he didn't erase us from his records. He flagged us. And while we floated in the quiet shadow of Athion's shroud, licking our wounds, repairing life support, and wondering what had just happened, a second war was brewing. One not of ships or guns, but of truth. Cass knew the reprieve wouldn't last. Dominion High Command wasn't known for nuance. If Vale had acted outside of protocol, he'd face inquiry, or worse. And we'd become a symbol, a Terran crew that surrendered and lived. That story would not sit well with those who still worshipped the myth of Earth's last stand, including some of our own. The first warning came from the Raleigh, an old Terran scout ship on a black ice orbit near the galactic fringe. We received a fragmented transmission, command compromised, watch for your own. Not all Terrans fight the same war anymore, then silence. Hours later the Raleigh exploded. No enemy fire, just internal sabotage. That's when we realised the danger wasn't just from outside the hull, it was inside the Resistance itself. They called themselves the Iron Remnant, an extremist cell from the old Earth Defence Forces, loyal to Captain Voss, loyal to the idea of Terran defiance. To them, surrender, no matter the reason, was treason. Cass's decision had made us a problem, a ship that chose life over glory. So they came for us. It started with a ghost signal, encoded in old Terran military ciphers, broadcasting on encrypted frequencies. Honour above all, death before surrender. The Valor will burn for what she forgot. We tracked the signal's origin. It came from a Terran ship, the ISS Judicator, last seen orbiting Europa, declared lost 10 years ago. Now it was back, and hunting us. Cass gathered the crew in the engine bay, not to hide, to speak plainly. We've been flagged by the Dominion, and now we're marked by our own. She looked tired. No medals, no uniform, just oil-streaked sleeves and cracked lips. We saved lives. That's not betrayal. That's what Earth meant before we lost it. But they want war, someone muttered. They think it's the only way we matter. Cass nodded. Then let's remind them that survival is louder than martyrdom. We tried to run, but the Judicator found us 3 days later. They disabled our drives with a precision missile, non-lethal, but intentional. They wanted us immobile, trapped, shamed. We watched them through the viewport, a shadow of our former fleet, Terran steel, reborn with rust and rage. They hailed us. And who appeared on the screen? Voss, not from our brig, from theirs. Imposters, he snarled. Cowards. Cass, I told you, surrender buys you nothing but a slower death. Cass stood still. You escaped. They freed me, he said, gesturing to the crew behind him. The ones who remember what we stood for. You forgot. You chose mercy from monsters. I chose people, she said coldly. You chose a myth. Myth is all we had left. No, she whispered. We had each other. You threw that away. The signal cut. Weapons powered up. They were going to finish what he'd started. Only this time, he had a ship. We had no weapons that could match the Judicator, no fleet to call, no Dominion ships to run to. We were alone. But Cass didn't panic. She opened the hangar doors, not to flee, to broadcast. Every civilian on board stood under the emergency lights, visible, unarmed, tired, real. We played the recordings from Cleon's Reach, a child's plea, a woman's last message to her brother on Mars, an old man praying in 6 languages at once. Then we opened the channel to the Judicator and we let them listen. For 10 minutes no one moved. Then the Judicator's engines powered down, then its lights dimmed, then silence. Cass turned to us. He didn't win. I didn't understand. She nodded to the console. He isn't on the bridge anymore. And sure enough, a new voice hailed us, a young one. This is Acting Commander Reyes of the Judicator. We've relieved Captain Voss of command. Some of us remember Earth differently. Cass nodded. Then maybe Earth isn't gone after all. The brig stayed full. Only now Voss was locked inside a different ship, and the rest of us. We started building something new, not out of pride, but out of survival. Legends leave behind echoes. Captain Elric Voss was a legend carved from blood and fire. The kind of name etched into survival manuals and whispered in cadet mess halls like a prayer, until we put him in a cell and watched the man rot beneath his own myth. What came after wasn't war, it was reckoning. News of what happened between the Valor and the Judicator didn't stay hidden. Not in a galaxy this hungry for stories. Not when a Terran crew, once bound to die in a blaze of hopeless glory, surrendered and lived. Not when they faced their own and won without firing a shot. First, it was just a whisper, a tale spread in backwater ports, frontier stations, scavenger bars. They locked the war hero in his own brig. They chose survival over suicide. They didn't win, but they didn't lose either. Then came the questions. Is the war over? Or did we just stop dying for the wrong reasons? Cass didn't want fame. She wanted fuel, parts, medical supplies, and a new stabilizer core for our limping ship. But everywhere we docked now, eyes followed her. Whispers bloomed behind her back. Some spat at her feet. Others stood in silent awe. The galaxy didn't know what to do with a hero who broke the rules and lived. The Dominion surprisingly kept their distance. Whether it was some quiet order from Vale or internal strife we couldn't see, they let us move through their patrol routes unharmed, not protected, just uninterrupted, as if they too were watching to see what the experiment would become. 3 weeks after the standoff with the Judicator, we found a message buoy floating near the wreck of Outpost Zalan. It wasn't Dominion tech, it was Terran, old and scorched, running on recycled power, its antenna bent like a broken limb. Cass pulled the message up on the bridge. A voice played, soft, hoarse, a child. My name is Yari. If anyone finds this, my mum said not all soldiers are bad. She said some fight with their hearts. If you hear this, please don't shoot. No coordinates, no details, just a voice. We didn't ask. We went. 12 hours through a field of magnetic debris, avoiding old Dominion mines and scavenger traps. We found what was left of the Prospera, a civilian lifeboat jury-rigged from a derelict cargo hauler. 12 survivors, no weapons, and a child, Yari, wearing a cracked helmet and a rusted Terran patch on her jacket, still singing lullabies into a dead radio. When we brought them aboard, one of the survivors, a man with scarred arms and blank eyes, saw our registry and gasped. "You're the mutiny ship." Cass's jaw tightened. "That what they're calling us now?" He nodded. "Some call you traitors. Others think you're a ghost story, but my wife died believing someone like you existed." He looked around the bridge, eyes glassy with shock. "I didn't think I'd ever see you." After that, we stopped running from the legend. We carried it. We made ports of call where Terran refugees had gone silent. We responded to faint distress pings no one else would touch. Not as soldiers, not as saviors, as witnesses. The ship changed. We turned one of the old hangars into a listening room, filled with recovered messages, recordings, journals. Civilians, soldiers, defectors, their stories now had a home. We didn't filter them. Some were angry, some hopeless, some filled with desperate, flickering light. We archived them all, because someone had to remember. One night, I sat in that hangar, listening to the voice of a man who had watched his planet burn from a space elevator. He didn't beg, he didn't scream, he just kept saying one thing: "If anyone finds this, we were here. That's all, just remember we were here." Cass sat beside me. Neither of us spoke. Because how do you answer that? What do you say to the ghosts of your own species, drifting through space on waves of static and grief? You don't fight them, you listen. And through that listening, something else began to happen. Ships began to follow us. First one, a medical transport, then 3 more. A mechanic crew from the old Belt Resistance, a deserter Dominion corvette crewed by Varn who defected when they heard the child's voice on a broadcast loop. They didn't ask for orders. They didn't raise flags. They just flew in our shadow. No chain of command, no grand speeches, just presence. The galaxy began calling it the Drift Fleet. No home, no cause, just a shared belief that life was more valuable than pride, and memory more powerful than vengeance. Voss still sat in his cell, now on the Judicator, silent and bitter. His legend crumbled around him, not by force, but by forgetting. Not erased, just left behind. And above us, the galaxy stirred. Because when a myth dies, something else is born in the silence between. Truth. We never fired a shot, and still, we changed everything. The Drift Fleet wasn't an army. We had no anthem, no flag, and no hierarchy. Just a growing constellation of broken ships, hopeful survivors, and one undeniable fact. The war had ended. The dying hadn't. So we gave the galaxy a choice. When the Dominion finally reacted, it wasn't with plasma cannons or kinetic strikes. It was narrative. They called us the false peace, accused us of psychological warfare, said we were softening the edges of rebellion with sentiment, spreading resistance under the guise of mercy. Weapons dressed in compassion, one Van Admiral sneered. And in a way, he wasn't wrong. We weren't dismantling fleets, we were dismantling beliefs. Voss was paraded on Dominion broadcast as a true Terran, a warning to their own kind of what humanity used to be. Violent, prideful, suicidal in its fury. But fewer listened now, because they'd heard the stories, because they'd seen us. When we reached the shattered mining colonies of Kairos's vein, something happened that changed even us. The Dominion blockade let us pass, not because they feared us, but because they wanted to hear the recordings. A Varn officer, grim and scarred, approached our airlock alone without armour. He handed Cass a memory crystal. "My sister died on the Ice Moons, killed by a Terran strike team. I hated your people," he said. "But then I heard your Drift Fleet broadcast. The child, the song, the surrender." "And now?" Cass asked gently. He didn't answer. He just looked at the crystal. "She used to hum. I didn't understand what it meant until I heard that same sound from one of yours." Then he left. That's when we understood. The war wasn't between species anymore. It was between stories. The one that said strength was fire, and the one that said strength was survival. We never rescued millions. We didn't end the Dominion. But across 1,000 systems, people began questioning. Soldiers hesitated. Captains refused impossible orders. Whole battalions laid down arms and asked for voices instead of vengeance. Our last message before the Dominion cut off our long-range broadcast was simple. Cass recorded it herself. No music, no flag, just words. "This is not surrender. This is choosing to live. And if enough of us choose that, maybe we get to build something worth surviving for." They jammed the signal, but not before it echoed through 7 colonies, 3 warships, and a moon station full of orphans who sang her message into old Terran transmitters like it was scripture. We were hunted after that. Not because we were dangerous, but because we were changing the definition of danger. They could destroy our ships, but not what we'd started. We weren't legends. We were a question the galaxy couldn't stop asking. What if we didn't have to die to be remembered? The war ended in fire, but the peace, it grew in silence, in whispers, in drift, and in every breath taken instead of held.